Hey everyone, it's Charlene. Today we're making this fun jungle themed card with some of the new products from Hero Arts. So we'll start out by creating our background. This is going to be tone on tone. I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of Kiwi cardstock, and this is the new Leafy background cling stamp. I'll take the release paper off of the back here, and then I'm going to line this up. You can see it's A2 sized. I'm going to line it up with my card panel and place it directly over that cardstock. Now I'll lift it up with my clear plate here on my stamp wheel, just making sure it sticks on there really well. I mentioned that this is going to be tone on tone, so I'm bringing in the Green Hills Core Ink. And this is going to look really fun because you're going to have a slightly different shade of green for these leaves all over the background. So I'm going to stamp and twist with my ink there. Once I get my stamp nice and inked up, I can flip this over, press it down to get the whole image to transfer, and lift that up. Oh, it already looks super cool. If you want to darken things up some more, you can always go back in with a second stamping, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'll go ahead and repeat the process, putting ink all over the stamp, and then we'll flip this over and press down with some nice even pressure. And there we go. Next, I'm going to bring in the Jungle Scene Stencil. This is really fun. It has lots of different options. I'm going to go with this main piece here. It looks almost like a storyboard. So I'm going to add some masking tape along the edges. That way I don't accidentally stick ink on our background that we've created. We don't want the ink to go outside of the stencil area. So I'm lining this up, sticking it to my mat, and then I'll add some masking tape along the other edges, again, so I don't mark up our card panel. I just want the ink to go in the areas of the stencil. Once I get that down, I'm going to use some Nautical Core Ink, which is this beautiful dark blue. It's almost a kind of navy color. I'm really going to get it there on my brush and come in and cover up the whole scene. Now, because the Nautical Core Ink is a darker ink, it's going to cover up the Kiwi cardstock, and it's also going to cover up our leafy pattern that we created with the Green Hills. So we are going to be left with the negative of this stencil in the Kiwi and the Green Hills. You'll see when I pull this up at the reveal, it's a really fun technique because you get all of the pattern and texture from your background stamp. Also, make sure to change the direction of your brush every once in a while. That way you get into all the nooks and crannies of the stencil and you don't have any spots that aren't crisp when you pull the stencil up. So now I've got the color that I like. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. Oh, it looks so cool. Look at that fun scene. I have my rectangle infinity dies here. I'm using the third from largest, and I'm going to line this up so that I have an equal border around that scene we've created. Now I can tape it down so it doesn't move when I'm running it through my die cutting machine because I want to keep those nice straight lines on there. I'll cut this out. Here's the finished cut piece. You can see it looks so fun. For our sentiment, I'm bringing in the Jungle Serenity bundle. So you'll have these stamps, and then you also have the coordinating dies. I'm going to use the Adventure Awaits sentiment and then cut it out with the die. So I'll stamp this onto a scrap of nautical cardstock that I have, and this is going to look really good because our nautical cardstock is going to tie into our Nautical Core Ink that we use to ink blend over the stencil. So this is a great way to keep that cohesive look to your card. Use some cardstock that's the same color as your inks that you've been blending with. So I added some anti-static powder down on the cardstock, and now I've inked it up with some clear embossing ink, pressing down lightly. I don't want to lose that nice line work that we have from the sentiment stamp. And then we can bring in some white superfine embossing powder here and just make sure to get good coverage. I'm going to cover it twice and then just lightly tapping on the back. I do have a few extra strays of embossing powder, so I'm just using a small flat dry paintbrush to remove those extra tiny little pieces of embossing powder. It's a great way to clean up your image if you don't quite get all of them from your anti-static powder. Now I will bring in my heat tool. I waited and made sure it was nice and hot before I brought it to the paper. That's going to give you a better result. Moving along, not staying in one spot too long. So now I get to bring my snips out and show you guys how I get my dies ready when I am using them. I want to get these little nub pieces off. So I'm just going to take my Hero Art snips here and place them right along the edge and then twist back and forth. This will allow that tiny little nubby metal piece to kind of bend off. It breaks off eventually. You don't want to hold down too hard with your snips, just lightly hold the piece and rotate back and forth. And there's our beautiful die ready for some cutting. So we'll cut that out with our die cutting machine. I did cut 2 extras of the sentiment die. I'm going to layer these up with some Hero Arts precision glue. So I'm running the glue all the way along the first die cut while I hold it with my reverse tweezers. So now I can lay that next die cut on top, add more glue going along. You don't need very much. You just want to hit kind of all of the main areas. And then I can add my top heat embossed piece on top of there, remove my tweezers, and then pinch around the edges to make sure that everything is nice and lined up. So while you're doing this, take your time. You don't have to rush, but it's not that hard to do, and it really adds a lot of impact to your card because you can see here now we're going to have this nice thick sentiment to add to the front of our card. To create our border, I'm using a piece of Dove White cardstock. It's cut to 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. And I'll add some glue here to the back of our stencil background. I'm going to apply it all along the center, all around the edges. And then as I press it down, I'm just being careful to ensure that I get an equal border all the way around. Now the Dove White cardstock is probably one of the whitest cardstocks I have ever used. I absolutely love it. It just gives you that nice bright white border when you're using it on a card. Oh, I've got my sentiment here. I'm going to add some glue to the back. I'm holding it with my reverse tweezers. That helps me to place it down and ensure that it stays nice and straight. So I'm going to get my card panel here and put it on my glass mat exactly where I need it to be. And that will help me visualize where to put my sentiment. I also stand up when I do this. It's just easier for me to see everything. So that looks pretty good there. And I'm going to add some glue here now to the back of the whole panel. You could just skip the white cardstock panel that you created the border with and glue everything directly to your A2 card base. That's just a personal preference. For me, I prefer to do it on a card panel first. Okay, here is our fun jungle themed card. You can see that really cool pattern that we have in the background and how it's showing throughout the entire scene. I hope you all picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.